I'm Jim Collison, and live from the Gallup campus here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Call to Coach, recorded on May 2nd, 2014. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions, comments, or contributions during the show, we'd love to have you interact with us. We do have a live chat room available for you. It's right below the main video window if you're listening at coaching.gallup.com/live. You can also, if you catch the video or both the audio offline and you're not doing it live with us, you can send us an email. Just send that to coaching@gallup.com. We'd love to get that back to you. And don't forget to visit the Gallup Strength Center. Super easy, just gallupstrengthcenter.com for all your coaching resources and training needs. You can also catch this video, like I said, both streaming and downloadable audio. And we have iTunes links coming for you here in about the next 4 or 5 weeks. So we're hoping to get those out to you very, very soon. And all the past shows are available at coaching.gallup.com. Heather Wright is our host today. Heather works as a senior learning and development consultant here at Gallup on the Riverfront. Heather, brand new to Call to Coach today. Welcome to your first Call to Coach. Great to see you.
Thank you, Jim. Nice to be here with you all.
Go ahead and, since you're the opportunity here, why don't we take that opportunity for you to tell us a little bit about you, and then you can introduce Nicole.
Well, you bet. I am a senior learning and development consultant here at Gallup. I've been with Gallup for a long time, 27 years. I know it looks like I started when I was 2, right? But been with Gallup for a long time, so I've kind of grown up in a strengths environment and have been there to watch Don Clifton build and develop StrengthsFinder and have been coaching with StrengthsFinder ever since we launched it. And so I spend a lot of my time with our clients helping them learn more about strengths, engagement, customer measurements, anything you can think of. But one of the things I love about the leading that I do in the classroom is the follow-up coaching that I get to do. So most programs that I lead, I get to coach either before, after, or both. And so I'm really excited today because some of the programs I've led in the past have helped me establish a great relationship with our guest today. And so I'm excited for everybody to meet Nicole and to get the chance to hear about her coaching journey. So my top 5, because I know people always ask, I lead with communication, individualization, maximizer, harmony, and focus. So those are my top 5. And Jim, I think it'd be a perfect time to introduce our guest today, if that's all right.
Yeah, you bet. Nicole, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, I am so honored to be here this afternoon. My name is Nicole Sedlacek, and I'm from O'Neill, Nebraska. So another Nebraskan here on the Call to Coach. My top 5 strengths are input, learner, focus, discipline, and achiever. And I was introduced to the strengths-based development, the CliftonStrengths only 2 years ago. And it seems so crazy that it was only 2 years ago that I sat down and took my online assessment. I was fortunate to be a part of the Entrepreneur Acceleration System that was being piloted in Nebraska. I was in the cohort of guides in 2011, in 2012, where we were introducing the strengths-based approach to small to medium-sized businesses and how that strengths-based approach could be used to help with job creation and employee engagement and customer engagement. And so since that journey of being introduced through the EAS program, I have used strengths in every aspect of my life, from personal and family. I'm one of the families that I have 2 daughters and my husband, and we have our strengths posted on our refrigerator, and we refer to those quite a bit, and what is it that each of us need, and how to communicate with each other. It's been a wonderful asset. We've turned our organization into a strengths-based organization, and we've used the strengths approach to really continue the Entrepreneur Acceleration System here in Holt County, Nebraska. I work in an economic development office, and we're always talking about creating jobs and retaining jobs, but adding that strengths-based approach to it to help business owners and business managers fully engage their employees and even their own personal strengths to be able to make wonderful things happen.
That's great. Nicole, tell me a little bit about kind of your journey as a coach. So you said it was only 2 years ago, and I giggle when you say that because I think, oh my gosh, it feels like we've known each other forever because we've conversations about your strengths over the years through EAS and then through your participation in all of our strengths courses and your recent certification. So I'm curious about your journey and how you fell in love with being a strengths coach, because I think about some of the other guides that were in your original cohort that, you know, loved their own experience and did the strengths thing and maybe coached a few other people, but they haven't pursued it like you have. And so I'm curious about what was kind of that thing that hooked you and made you want to really add this title of strengths coach to your everyday role at Holt County?
Well, I think some of it has to do with that achiever theme that I have, you know, that certification level and that achieving to always kind of, you know, go on to that next level. But I could really see what an impact, you know, I only worked with a couple of companies in the EAS program, but, you know, I was really just sad when we couldn't continue that program in its entirety in Nebraska. And so I really wanted to see, you know, how can we still kind of model this type of program. And we've always been a unique kind of economic development organization where we've always been kind of focused on our assets and what we have. And being in a rural county in Nebraska, you know, sometimes economic development is a little bit harder to understand, and we're not out, you know, recruiting lots of jobs and businesses. And so I really just fell in love with, you know, focusing on, you know, what it is that we have and how we can take our strengths and our talents to accomplish all of the great, wonderful things. And so I'm in my goal friends group. I meet this group of gals. We meet on a somewhat regular basis, and we're always kind of challenging ourselves. Okay, what is it the next thing that we're wanting to do? And I remember sitting down in one of our sessions and saying, you know, I want to be a strengths coach. I really want to be a strengths coach. But I didn't know if Gallup had that strengths program. And so, you know, it's that input and learner in me is kind of going to the internet to find out, okay, how can I be a strengths coach? What are the processes? If, you know, if I can't work at Gallup, how can I, you know, be a strengths coach and really take, you know, what I've learned through the EAS program and apply it here to my job in economic development. And so I had found where Gallup had really kind of packaged this program where, you know, I love the idea that Gallup, you know, wants so many people to, you know, 1 billion people to know their strengths, but then to have 1 million coaches helping them discover their strengths. And to me, that was just really powerful to hear and say, oh, I can be one of those. And so I wrote it down in my dream book that I want to be a Gallup strengths coach. And so working through the process of, okay, this is my first step, and talking to Jamie at Gallup and how I can go through that process was really fun for me, and scary too, because, you know, I remember having a conversation with Heather saying, you know, Heather, what the greatest coaches, you know, what are their top 5 themes, and are there certain themes that make it better for a coach, you know, to be a good coach? And of course, you know, Heather assuring me that, you know, all coaches have all different themes for talent, and they all use them in that different way.
You mean I didn't say they had input, learner, achiever, focus, and discipline? That's right. I love that. I love the idea of your goal friends. Yeah. That group is pretty powerful in Holt County. And I think the influence that just even that sharing and your enthusiasm about being a strengths coach, did you have some people that were supporters of you kind of getting there? I think a lot of people out there would be curious, okay, you wrote it in your dream book, but how'd you get it to come to reality? Mm-hmm.
Definitely, you know, the goal friends, you know, we encourage each other. We're sitting down on a regular basis, okay, what are the steps to being able to achieve that? And then I think also sharing with my own husband as to, you know, what is it that I'm wanting to do with this? You know, we already have a kind of a full plate with our economic development services, but how can we tie that into already the things that we're doing? And so kind of sharing with him and also with my board of directors as to kind of, what would this mean for our role in economic development in the county, and how does that benefit businesses and organizations and residents in the county.
Good, good. So then where did you go? You came to your first class, and tell us a little bit about what happened. How did you fall in love with being a strengths coach?
Well, I think I found myself, before I started taking the classes, really just talking to people, not only about, I've got input and learner in me, I'm always wanting to learn stuff, but also want to kind of share that information with anybody that I come across with. And so that input in me, when I would talk to someone, that maybe knew where their strengths were, or maybe I was even doing some strength spotting on them to say, oh, I think that person leads with competition, or you lead with competition, and that's really great for a team. And just kind of, I found myself just almost spewing out strengths information all of the time to people, and so I found that it was something that was coming up in my daily conversations with people, and even business owners that I was just meeting and sitting down with, kind of starting that strengths-based conversation and discussion. And so I kind of had that hunger for more information, and really wanted to kind of dive into. I've always been comfortable in talking to groups about the strengths-based approach, whether we have a countywide leadership program, and so applying kind of that strengths-based leadership approach to that program. And so I was very comfortable kind of talking to group settings, but it was the one-on-one coaching that was maybe a little bit more of a scarier thought to me, and a journey that I wasn't sure that I had the talents to do. So I continued my second class with Gallup on the Gallup campus, and then it was my last class, the coaching for individual performance session that I sat in on, and that session is the one that really made it tick for me. That session was when I really felt like, oh my gosh, yes, I can really talk to individuals one-on-one and help them understand not only their top 5, but their top 10, and how do they interact and work with each other when they're paired together. How can they apply them for the most success?
It's so interesting, because I think a lot of people would say it's easier for them to talk to an individual than to talk to a group. So you're a little bit of the flip there. That's an interesting perspective to hear. And I love hearing you talk about that coaching for individual performance where light bulbs came on for you, because I think that was my experience too. The first time I saw the new curriculum around that and coached for since StrengthsFinder came into existence, to have some new frameworks or new lenses to look at the combinations of the dynamics of strengths, really, I think, has opened up my coaching too, even having been doing it for years. So I love that you call that out for people. Tell me a little bit, since you've been having more individual conversations lately, I'm curious about kind of the lives you touch. You've talked about the leadership program that you run, but then also the individual coaching you've been doing lately. I'm curious about the stories, the people you've touched, the coaching you're most proud of. Are there any kind of moments of impact that you want to highlight for us?
Yeah, the most recent one I was just happened in the last week. One client that I coached, have coached quite a few different times on individual sessions, and really kind of helping her really kind of know what her top 5 meant. And how she could apply that in her day-to-day life, and to be able to use those themes for talent to accomplish some of her great goals that she's set out for herself. And so she recently called to tell me that she had a job interview. And in this job interview, the common question that all interviewers ask are, what are your strengths? And she really felt that she had that really great knowledge of what it is that her strengths were. And so she was able to really share the story of how her strength of being a relator could definitely help this company that she was applying at a job for, that she could use that theme of relator on how she could relate to potential customers, that she has kind of been in their shoes, and how this product and service would most benefit them in the situation that they were in. And so using that relator theme, but then also that maximizer theme that she has in her top 5, how she was able to use that as a theme to really turn that company into something from good to great, because she, strives to make things superb and wants to make things better. And so really using those 2 themes, she was really able to kind of share with the company that, these are 2 great strengths that I can use to help benefit your company. And she called to tell me yesterday that they had called her back to award her the job. And so it was something that she was really excited about. And it was neat to hear her say how, the understanding and awareness of her own top 5 and how she could apply it into her career.
That's so exciting, because, when Don Clifton talks about that, when he talked about the strengths-based philosophy, one of the things about creating StrengthsFinder was so that people had a common language that they could use to tell other people what they did best. And so to see that kind of come to fruition is so exciting. And I always think about, one of my colleagues always says, his goal in coaching others around their strengths is to give them clarity and confidence around their strengths. And it sounds like that's exactly what you did for her. She probably knew that she was a relator. She probably knew she was a maximizer, but the conversations with you helped her evolve in that clarity and confidence about not just, oh yes, this is me, but now here's how I can aim that towards an outcome or a role or a responsibility or a task, and kind of see those connections. And so that the reality of the application, just, you gave her such clarity and confidence. Think about what a difference that makes for someone going into a job interview, where in the past when someone says, so what are your strengths, you go, oh shucks, get all modest, or we don't articulate it very well. But you gave her that clarity that just allowed her to really articulate with specificity, this is not only who I am, but what I can do with who I am. That's powerful.
It is very powerful, and was just I was so happy she would share that with me, that because she was aware of her strengths and to be able to communicate that so effectively.
That is neat. Well, and I think about some of our research too that then indicates when people are in roles where they not only know their strengths but then get to use their strengths every day, just what power that has in terms of driving people's engagement too. So it's not just that, yay, I got the job, but she probably got a job that really is the right job for her, and that every day she's going to look forward to going and performing in that role. So that's going to be neat. Very good. Other examples or people that you've coached that you think, wow, that was a great discovery moment? Or I'm curious too about the leadership groups and how you've used strengths with groups of people in a leadership development kind of perspective.
So with our leadership program, we have changed it so that we start off the program now each year right away with the strengths-based approach, and really helping them discover themselves and who they are, and then kind of that was last month when we started this current year session, really introducing them to the strengths-based approach and helping them understand who it is that they are. And so that kind of created this awareness for them that when they went back to their business or back to their organization, that they were more aware of who they were and maybe why they ticked. But then because of other people sharing in the class as to, okay, how that deliberative in their top 5, what that looks like for them and what it is that they need, they were maybe able to hear what some of their classmates in the Institute were saying, and could maybe spot that in maybe family members or in coworkers, or even in other volunteer positions where people work together, but maybe don't always see eye to eye, or maybe sometimes can clash, that they were able to have a whole new perspective for, okay, this person, maybe has more of those strategic themes and have the really big ideas, and maybe, they're thinking up the ideas, but really I have the executing themes, and so, trying to pair those up, that we can get these things done instead of, kind of feeling like, okay, he's always coming up with the ideas, but I have to do the work kind of thing. Really that whole new sense of appreciation for our differences in each other, I think has been the most key piece to that in our institute.
Very good. Well, and I love that you use the 4 domains as you help people kind of navigate through their own strengths, and just even the enhanced awareness that someone gets when you think about, oh wow, lots of my themes are about executing and influencing, but not so much about strategic thinking. Who could I partner with? And just to use that framework of influencing, executing, relationship building, and strategic thinking is just kind of an additive that again helps leaders focus and say, okay, I may be a leader, but I have to build a fully well-rounded team that can accomplish all these elements that are so important to high performance. So very fun. Tell me a little more, too, about, I think people would be curious about the application at home. I know in the past you and I have talked about, trying to manage our husbands through the lens of their strengths, those kinds of things. But I'm curious, you mentioned having everybody's strengths on the refrigerator, and I think that just triggered something for me because I've had my big kids go through Strengths Explorer because they're 11 years old now, and we've talked about it a little bit, but I hadn't thought about putting it up for kind of everybody in the family to see each other's on a continuous basis to keep us thinking about what we need from each other as a family. So that's something I'm going to take away from today. But talk a little bit more about just discoveries you've made on the home front about the dynamics of your strengths with your spouse or with the kiddos.
Well, I always think about, how can I, as a parent, maybe help feed my children's themes, and we've done the Strengths Explorer. How can I help feed their themes of, I've got one child who she's a future thinker, and so what are some of those activities, that I can kind of create and experience with her that are really getting her excited because of her future thinker. And both of my girls share that confidence theme in that Strengths Explorer version, and so how can I continue to because they're at that age where as they're growing up and turning into older girls that sometimes I think as growing up into the teenagers we sometimes lose that confidence, and so how can we continue to with that Strengths Explorer, it's showing that they have confidence right now, and so how can my husband and I as parents kind of still work with them to keep that confidence in them, and not let that be something that kind of disappears later on throughout their growing years.
I love that. Hey, I think Jim might have some good questions ready for us from our audience, so I'm going to let Jim chime in here and share some of those with us.
Yeah, indeed. They've been itching to get to Nicole, so let's get a few of those out. Maureen asked, I'm intrigued that Nicole is using this for entrepreneurial acceleration. Wonder how she introduces it to entrepreneurs and their reaction to the idea of a strength-based approach.
Well, it's been really fun. We've been kind of doing a soft approach to it, that we haven't really been out, broadcasting or screaming out loud from the streets saying, hey, check out the strengths-based approach. We've been very careful with, introducing it to the companies that we really feel have that opportunity and are poised for growth. And so kind of casually introducing it to them and kind of visiting with them about, discovering not only kind of the team's themes for talent, but also looking at it from that business owner management perspective, that, okay, how can we use our strengths to accomplish our business goals? And so kind of aligning the team with the company's goals by focusing around those strengths. And so it's we're really just kind of getting started. I mentioned I'm just so brand new to the strengths approach, only being introduced to it since 2011, but going through the certification process and now with the rollout of the Entrepreneurial Strengths Finder, really kind of tying that into it as well for those entrepreneurs and business owners to not only be aware of their top 5 themes, but understanding their entrepreneurial strengths profile and how they can use that to work towards their company's goals and entrepreneurial goals.
Nicole, I'm going to read into Maureen's question a little bit, and I think one of the things they ask, are you getting any pushback from these entrepreneurs when you start with the strengths-based approach? Do they, because I think that's a worry among coaches that they're going to get with certain groups and they're going to get pushback. Are you experiencing any of that, or is it a situation where they kind of accept it and absorb it?
You know, it's not for everybody right away. We have had some pushback. I have had some pushback who, sometimes those entrepreneurs just quite aren't ready for that yet. They're not maybe seeing maybe the timing for it to understand kind of how they can apply the strengths-based approach. So it's maybe there is some pushback, but it's just being very selective of to start off with that what companies or what businesses do you want to work with that really kind of jump at the opportunity to develop that strengths-based approach. And as coaches, we don't want to leave our coaching sessions feeling drained because somebody is giving us that push that I don't get the strengths-based approach and this isn't for our company and this isn't going to work for us kind of thing. And I think if we're getting that as coaches, then we need to know that, okay, this isn't the right time for this company or this business, that, as coaches, let's focus our energy, somewhere else with maybe that entrepreneur business who is ready to look at the strengths approach.
Heather, any quick tips that we might have for someone where they're in a situation where they do get that immediate pushback? Nicole's been doing this for a couple of years, but, because that does happen sometimes. Any quick tips that we give?
Well, and I think sometimes the place that coaches see it most is the pushback in what difference is knowing my strengths going to have for me. And I think it's about a common language and about confidence in knowing what you can contribute. When I think about entrepreneurs, the ones that have embraced it the most are the ones that know I can't do everything and be everything as I'm launching this new idea or this new business. And when they pretty quickly figure out I need other people, then they start to embrace their own strengths. If the way I have approached it with some of those folks where you see the pushback is to say, so how's that business coming for you? Or how's this launch of this new idea going for you? And when they say, well, it isn't happening as fast as I need it to, or I'm hitting this stumbling block. Oftentimes it's going back to their strengths finder and looking at their strengths and maybe what they bring to the table and what they don't bring to the table. Sometimes it's as much as coaching them around their strengths and saying, this is something you're really good at, but you're overusing it, or you're overpowering people with this strength. Can we moderate a little bit? Or, you know what, you've got a lot of these kinds of strengths, but you're lacking something in relationship building or executing, and you need to find a partner, whether it's a business partner or a coach or a process that can kind of round that out. And then they start to open up and really embrace who they are and what they can do and where we can supplement that and support them so that they can really get their goals achieved that much more quickly.
Sure, good. So Regis asked this question for you, Nicole. Do you do any external coaching? If so, how does your employer feel about you doing that?
That's a great question. Not at this point. I'm not doing any external coaching. It's all been kind of focused in with my role at Economic Development, other than kind of the volunteer external coaching that I've been doing, just volunteer, with friends and family outside of Holt County. But at this point, I haven't been.
Okay. Walt asked a good question, and we did post the link to a Gallup Business Journal article in the chat room, so an advantage of being live, and we'll try and get that in the show notes. But he asked, and Heather, maybe this is for both you or Nicole, we all tend to use the phrase strength-based organization, but people new to strengths don't really know what that means. Are there any resources that define what a strengths-based organization looks or feels like? Nicole, why don't you start with that? How have you been handling that?
Well, I've been, I guess, approaching that from the perspective of, from our own organization of, really aligning people to the tasks and jobs that need to be done on a regular basis, from the strategic thinking, aligning the people with what they're good at, and really focusing in who that person is as an individual and what they need to feel engaged and to feel energized at the end of the workday. And so, what that maybe looks like for a new company that isn't doing that, it's just kind of that constant awareness of talking, discovering and learning the language, learning the theme names, and recognizing that when we see that in our colleagues. And so to me, that's kind of what that strengths-based organization looks like, that they're recognizing and celebrating it when they see those themes in action in each other.
I love that. And all I would add is when I think about strengths-based organizations and how Gallup defines that and helps our clients develop that, it goes back to some of that research about my manager spends the majority of the interactions they have with me focusing on my strengths or focusing on my weaknesses. And the data shows how much engagement changes when the majority of the time that we spend with our leaders, if it's focused on strengths, how much more engaging that is. And so when I think about a strengths-based organization, it's one that through the way that they set expectations, the way that they position people, like Nicole's mentioned, do people get to do what they do best every day? But the way that we set expectations has the framework of a person's strengths in mind. The way that we celebrate and recognize them is aligned with their strengths. And the way that we begin to help them develop and grow takes into account who they are and what their strengths are, because all of that drives the needs that a person has. If I'm really deliberative, I may need you to set expectations differently for me than if I'm restorative or an achiever. When I think about recognizing and celebrating, someone with significance wants people to know about their accomplishments much differently than a person with deliberative or includer. So you think about all of those things in the way that you really manage a person's day-to-day life.
Very good. Baha, I think hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, has actually a two-part question for you, Nicole, and we hear this first part a lot. So if you're listening to Called to Coach for the first time, you'll hear this kind of a theme throughout most of our programs, but they ask, do you have specific objectives or goals for each coaching session? So as you approach an individual, do you go in it with a specific goal in mind?
That's sometimes as a coach that is what I've struggled with, and having discipline even in my top 5. I think I want to go in with that structured interview and session and with that individual. But the really kind of just my simple kind of goal that I have for each session is for my client to really just have that better understanding of their themes and how they can apply them to reaching their own goals. So it could be that the first session may be just kind of that awareness and kind of knowing when they are using their themes and their strengths, what that looks like and how they feel from that. But then it could be talking about what are some specific things that you're having issues with right now, or talking about what specific goals do you have that you're wanting to tackle in the next 90 days or 6 months. It really varies per session with each individual, but just kind of asking a series of questions, and then it could be just either talking about a struggle that they're having and how we can talk through their themes of talent to be able to overcome that obstacle, or talking about that specific goal that they have in mind. Maybe it's something personally, or it could be something even for their business, and how to apply their strengths to be able to reach that.
Okay, and then as a follow-up, and I think a good follow-up to what you just said, is what's the key difference between coaching individuals, and maybe this is what have you learned around these, the key difference between coaching individuals and coaching groups. Is coaching groups more of a facilitation, and what's the difference between the two?
Yeah, definitely coaching groups is definitely more of that facilitation process. It's a lot of sharing collectively as a group on things that they see and witness as their group and their organization. But maybe the key difference between the individual and the groups is that that it tends to be, definitely more opening and more of an intimate conversation that, people maybe wouldn't share on in that group setting what they would in that one-on-one individual session. And so, with that group setting, it's me asking just a lot of questions. And what does this look like when you're seeing this in your team? And that's kind of what I would share with that.
Sure. Yeah, it's good. It's a good answer. I think it can go either or. I mean, it just depends on the individual or the groups and how those groups work out. This is a great question because especially when you bring ESF in, and Falana asked this question: has anyone, and she's kind of thrown that out to the chat room at that point, but created a business map that would strategically align the strengths necessary to achieve their goals? In other words, taking that business, that ESF idea, taking the strengths and building a map based on those two products. Have you done anything like that yet?
Not specifically with that, but having that, not a specific model, but really talking, with the individual, with the client, for them to kind of be aware of their profile on the ESF. And what are they, kind of having some immediate things kind of jump at them to say, okay, where are you seeing your top 5, in these? But how can you, on especially in that contributing or that supporting areas on your ESF, how can you use your strengths to help support those areas that we need to maybe work on? And so just really kind of looking at it from that perspective.
Okay.
It's interesting, Jim. On Tuesday, we had a group of over 200 entrepreneurs and people that partner with entrepreneurs here at the Riverfront in Gallup. And they all took the Entrepreneurial Strengths Finder for the first time. Many of them had also taken the Clifton Strengths Finder. And that's something that Dr. Sangeeta Bottle and I were talking about this week, of just really beginning to maybe build that framework or the curriculum for the conversation of how you take results from that Entrepreneurial Strengths Finder assessment and look at those 10 domains and begin to think about how do our Clifton Strengths Finder themes feed and fuel those domains. So that's something that we're going to be exploring a lot. It was fun to hear the conversation from some of the entrepreneurs in the room who were saying, gosh, here are my top 5 Clifton Strengths Finder strengths, and here's where I'm dominant on the Entrepreneurial Strengths Finder, and I don't know if they match. And then the more we talked, I was like, oh yeah, there's some alignment. Oh, there's a, so it's fun to see that perhaps if an entrepreneur is a risk taker, they're seeing their significance come to fruition or their ideation play out in that risk taker part of who they are as an entrepreneur. So that's been a fun thing to explore, and certainly it's kind of one of the hot new areas that we'll be investigating and look for lots more articles and stories about that.
And let me correct myself. Falana is how that is correctly pronounced out there. I like to get that right. You can, if you think I'm going to mispronounce your name in chat, which I will 90% of the time, put the pronunciation in there. So I appreciate you doing that. She did say in a follow-up, she says she's looking for more of a business tool to ID and align the employees. And so, Heather, any thoughts on anything we have along those lines from a tool standpoint?
Well, I think about. That's a great idea. There's, for a lot of our clients, we build those identification tools to say, do you have the right talent for a given role? If that's where you're going with the question, Falana, I think that's something that Gallup does. A lot of those tools aren't necessarily broadly marketed yet, but that is something that's been discussed and is on the horizon in the not so distant future. Are there some more generalizable roles where we could put some tools for selection out there to identify the right talent? I always think about selection tells you, can the person do the job you're considering them for? StrengthsFinder tells you how will they do it. But StrengthsFinder doesn't give you an intensity kind of measure like this entrepreneurial StrengthsFinder does. We're starting to, with that entrepreneurial StrengthsFinder, say how intense is a person's talent for these elements that we see in the best, most successful entrepreneurs. So that's definitely something that's on our researchers' horizon here.
Very cool. Tracy asked this question: for those who are new to strengths coaching, where could people find local strengths coaches to meet with, to start or join a group of goal friends to explore the next challenges? That's actually one of my jobs here at Gallup, is to get those local groups together. So in the chat room, I'm going to put the Facebook group that we have. We do have a list of local groups, and local means broken down by country. So we've got the United States with the states. We've got one for Singapore. We have one for South Africa. We have one for Malaysia and the Philippines and Japan. They're all over. And if your country's not represented, just drop me a note on Facebook and let me know. We will create one for you, and that's a great way. And then you can direct message individuals on Facebook to kind of find those goal friends. I like that. That's a concept that might stick around for a while, Nicole.
Yeah.
Very good. Those goal friends. So I posted the link to the Facebook group in chat. Really, it's just facebook.com/groups/call-to-coach resource that's there. Heather, let's do some final words as we kind of wrap this up, but I'll turn it back over to you and then throw it to me for the final stuff.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that I have so appreciated about Nicole as a strengths coach is just, like she mentioned, her themes kind of drove her to, the input, the learner, the need to know more, but just how she's really applied it to every aspect of her life. And I think that's what has made her seem so polished and professional about her coaching so quickly, is she's just looked for opportunities everywhere she could find them to apply the coaching and to ask questions and to try things on and to experiment with it. So it's just been exciting to watch Nicole progress in her confidence as a coach, and I'm just excited, especially around the entrepreneurial strengths finder and the marrying of that with Clifton Strengths Finder. I look for Nicole to be really one of our great resources and leaders in piloting that and really having some great stories to tell about that into the future. So I'm so glad, Nicole, that you were able to join us today and to help tell your story to those that can maybe take some of your ideas and tricks and tools away and begin applying them in their own coaching.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to really kind of share my story. And again, anytime I can talk about strengths with any sort of audience, I'm just in heaven. But I think it is an exciting time, I think, to be a coach with the the new ESF and aligning that with StrengthsFinder and kind of applying it to that entrepreneurial spirit. I think it's an exciting time to see what great things we can bring to our communities and bring to our business community.
And Nicole, you are in our Facebook group, so if folks are interested, if they've got questions for you afterwards, they could post those to our group, and you'd be out there to answer it?
I would, yes.
All right, and if you didn't hear that, she said she'd love it. You broke up a little bit there, right? Did I quote you right? You would
yes,
love to do
I
that.
loved it. Yeah, I would love that. Yes.
Good. Well, that is a really good way, and I know Facebook is not available in all countries, and so if it's not available in your country, we haven't started a second one yet, but if it's not available in your country, let me know. You can send me an email, jim_collison@gallup.com, and I'll look into figuring out how we get resources in the country you're in. Many of the countries we reach don't have Facebook or Twitter or even YouTube, and actually some exciting things that we are doing around those. We're providing some new opportunities for you to get these materials in countries where those resources are blocked. So we have those all coming here throughout the summer. Exciting stuff coming up, and I'll remind you of the resources that we talked about. Everything's available out at our Gallup Strength Center. Just head to gallupstrengthcenter.com. Like I mentioned before, if you have questions or comments, or you'd like to be a guest blogger, we are. Nicole, have you guest blogged yet? Do we have?
I have not yet. No.
We got to get you in the guest blogging realm if you're interested in doing that. Maybe you don't want to be ever on camera, and some people don't. And Nicole, thank you for coming on. But if you want to be a guest blogger with us, just send an email to us, coaching@gallup.com. We don't take all submissions, but we do take the really, really good ones, and we will consider those for our coaching blog as well. You can catch the recorded audio and video of this webcast, plus all the past ones as well. We've done 20 or 25 of them now, available out at coaching.gallup.com. The Facebook and YouTube links are out there as well. We do have some meetups that I want to highlight for you. If you do go to the coaching site at coaching.gallup.com, our pace of meetups is picking up, and if you are not aware of what's going on in the strengths movement especially around the United States, and we did a meetup in Singapore as well. This is, as we get bigger, we need to get smaller, and so these meetups give you an opportunity to personally meet individuals in your area. That was a question that came up in chat. You can either do it through Facebook, or guess what? You can do it in person. Not every city, but we have a goal of 100 cities by the end of the year: Indianapolis, Dallas, Oklahoma City, Austin, I mentioned Singapore, and there's a very thriving one in both the Dallas and Sacramento areas. All that information is available at coaching.gallup.com. Click on the Meetup Events tab. And my good friend Scott, who's sitting next to me, helps me maintain that. And we'd love to have you show up at a meetup that is near you. And then I want to also remind you on the way out, we've got a couple more exciting events coming up next week. Theme Thursday, we will be talking about Relator. And so you will want to be in on that. It's just like this. So if it's the first time to call the coach and you're like, how do I do this? Just show up Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern instead of Fridays, and we do that. Kurt Liesfeld and myself, we will be talking about Relator, and then the Thursday after that's Woo. I wonder if there's any combo there between Relator and Woo, and pretty excited about both of those in my top 10. Pretty excited about that coming up as well. Stay around for the post show. Nicole, thank you for coming out and being part of our program as well.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You bet. We're back on in 2 weeks. Jeremy, I think, will be back in 2 weeks with us. And Heather, by the way, great job on filling in for Jeremy today.
Thank you.
Very,
Happy
very
to do
good.
it.
Yeah, it's good to have you on here. We'll do it all again in 2 weeks for Called the Coach. We want to just say thanks. If you joined us live, thanks. And if you are listening to the recorded version, thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day. Goodbye, everybody.